All right, strap yourselves in. We're going deep today into the Russia-Ukraine conflict.
Yeah, deep dive time.
Pulling straight from Wikipedia, we've got a timeline covering August 1st, 2024.
All the way to today, November 19th.
It's like your cheat sheet to the latest twists and turns in this thing.
Perfect for anyone who wants to stay in the loop.
Right.
But, doesn't have hours to wade through articles and reports.
Exactly. We've condensed it all down to those key events.
Battles, turning points, all the crucial stuff.
And trust me, there are some genuinely wild details in here.
Buckle up.
So, August 2024. The conflict's already raging, of course.
Oh, yeah.
But things really ramp up this month. Russia's pushing hard in the Donbas.
Capturing villages in Donetsk Oblast, inching closer and closer to this city called Pokrovsk.
And Pokrovsk, that's strategically vital, right?
Hugely.
It's a major transport hub for Ukraine.
If Russia takes it, it could really disrupt their supply lines.
So, high stakes.
Very high.
But here's the thing. While Russia was pushing there, Ukraine decides to make a pretty daring move. Oh, yeah.
They launch counter-incursions into Russia itself.
Specifically targeting the Kursk and Belgorod oblasts.
It's a major shift. Up until this point,
Right.
the fighting was pretty much contained within Ukraine's borders.
This changes things.
Now, Ukraine's taking the fight to the enemy.
Flipping the script.
It really does.
Yeah.
And it raises so many questions.
Like what?
What does this mean for Russia's morale?
I mean, fighting on your own soil, that's got to hit differently.
Right. And the potential for escalation.
Could this provoke a more drastic response from Putin?
Exactly. And speaking of bold moves,
Yeah.
remember that request Ukraine made to Mexico?
Oh, wow, yeah. Asking Mexico to arrest Putin during a planned visit.
Citing that International Criminal Court warrant.
Citing war crimes.
Mexico obviously declined.
Of course.
But it's a good reminder that this war is playing out on a global stage.
Absolutely.
All sorts of diplomatic complexity.
Yeah, it's a tangled web.
And while all this political drama is going on, the skies above the conflict zone, they're getting pretty crowded. Drone warfare really intensified in August.
We saw Ukraine launching a massive drone attack on Russia's Lupetsk Oblast.
Causing significant damage.
And on the flip side, Russia claimed to have taken down
A whole lot of Ukrainian UAVs,
30
unmanned aerial vehicles,
or drones, in plain English.
in a single night.
30. That's more than a squadron of fighter jets.
Drones are becoming major players in this conflict.
But what does that mean for the future of warfare? Are we heading towards a world where wars are fought mainly by robots?
That's a question worth pondering.
It sounds like science fiction.
It does.
And as we move into mid-August, all eyes turn towards the battle for Kursk.
Ukraine managed to establish a military administration there.
Zelensky even claimed control over several settlements.
This was surprising to a lot of analysts.
The expectation was that Russia would have a home field advantage there.
You would think so.
But Ukraine really dug in.
And they held their ground.
And speaking of digging in,
All right.
Russia appoints a new leader to handle the situation in Kursk.
A guy named Alexei Dyumin.
This is where it gets interesting.
All right, lay it on me.
Dyumin's a former bodyguard. And get this, he once fought off a bear with his bare hands.
Whoa, that's some serious courage.
Talk about nerves of steel.
No kidding.
But jokes aside, his appointment shows just how seriously Russia's taking this Ukrainian incursion.
It's not just symbolic.
Right.
Dyumin's a seasoned military figure.
His presence signals that Russia intends to regain control.
Absolutely.
Meanwhile, on the international front, support for Ukraine keeps flowing.
We see more U.S. military aid.
Germany delivers those Iris-T air defense systems.
Super sophisticated, those.
And even Australia starts thinking about sending those mothballed M1A1 tanks they have.
Wow, dusting off the old gear.
It's a truly global effort to bolster Ukraine's defenses.
But it raises a big question.
What's that?
How long can this level of support be sustained?
Right.
As the war drags on, will countries waver in their commitment? Or will they double down? Only time will tell.
That's the million-dollar question. What do you think out there? Let us know.
Yeah, chime in.
And as August gives way to September,
Right.
this conflict, it continues its relentless back and forth.
The Azov Brigade.
A highly motivated Ukrainian unit, right?
Oh, yeah.
They reclaim some ground near New York.
There's a town called New York in Ukraine.
There is.
Huh. Learn something new every day.
But Russia's not backing down either.
They're pushing forward near Vuhledar.
And they capture a strategically important town called Krasnohorivka.
Every inch is fiercely contested.
This war is a brutal grind, a war of attrition.
And tragically, the attacks on both sides become even more destructive during this period.
We see a horrific incident, a Russian missile attack on Poltava.
58 people killed.
And it wasn't just military targets.
A hospital in Sumy gets hit,
In a devastating double-tap strike.
where a second missile is launched shortly after the first to target rescuers and medical personnel.
A chilling reminder of the indiscriminate nature of this war.
And the toll it's taking on civilians.
Even a Ukrainian Supreme Court judge was killed by a drone strike.
It really highlights how this conflict reaches into every corner of society.
And then, to add another layer of complexity, we start seeing evidence of external forces getting more directly involved.
Russia began using Chinese ZFB-05 armored vehicles.
And there were reports, though unconfirmed,
Of North Korean soldiers potentially being deployed.
That raises some serious red flags.
It does. The more players you add to this conflict, the more unpredictable and dangerous it becomes.
And then there was that horrifying incident with the Ukrainian prisoner of war.
The one potentially killed with a sword marked for Kursk.
Just a chilling detail.
It sparked outrage, calls for investigations into potential war crimes.
A stark reminder of the brutality unfolding in this war.
And the need for accountability.
It also raises another question. How might the involvement of forces like North Korea impact the trajectory of this war?
Could it tip the balance? Or could it lead to a wider regional conflict?
It's a scenario no one wants to see.
Agreed, but it's one we need to be aware of.
And as September transitions into October, Pokrovsk, remember that strategically vital transport hub.
Oh, yeah.
It finds itself increasingly under threat.
Russian forces closing in.
Evacuation orders being issued for residents.
It's heartbreaking to think of people being forced from their homes again.
Absolutely. And on top of the escalating fighting,
Right.
we see another disturbing event.
What happened?
A car bombing of a collaborator at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant.
A reminder that the battle lines in this war aren't always clear-cut.
Loyalties divided, the stakes incredibly high, especially when you're talking about the safety of a nuclear power plant.
Absolutely.
And speaking of those external forces we discussed earlier, October brings confirmation that North Korean soldiers are indeed present near Mariupol.
There were even reports of desertions from their ranks.
Which is fascinating in itself.
What would make a North Korean soldier already operating in a foreign country decide to desert?
Paints a picture of a very volatile situation on the ground.
Even within the ranks of those foreign troops.
The bigger question remains, though. Why is North Korea involved in this conflict at all?
Are they being paid by Russia?
Are they testing out new weapons?
Or is there some other geopolitical game at play? The motives are still murky.
Yeah, a lot of unknowns there. It raises some profound questions.
Ethical, geopolitical.
What are the implications of using foreign soldiers in warfare? Does it make a conflict more or less likely to escalate?
What are the long-term consequences for the countries involved?
So many things to think about.
It's a complex issue with a long and often troubled history.
And as we enter November,
Right.
we see a marked escalation in drone warfare,
The strikes on Moscow were some of the largest yet.
reaching deep into Russian territory,
And for the first time, we saw a drone attack in Dagestan.
a republic in southern Russia.
It seems nowhere is truly safe from this new form of warfare.
It really feels like the rules of engagement are changing before our eyes. And on the ground, the fighting continues to take a heavy toll.
Ukrainian sources reported record-high Russian losses.
A stark reminder of the war's brutal human cost.
Real people behind those casualty figures.
Soldiers, civilians, families torn apart.
It's a tragedy.
And then adding another layer of tension,
Yeah.
the U.S. makes a controversial decision
What's that?
to allow Ukraine to strike targets inside Russia.
With long-range missiles.
A major development, potentially altering the balance of power.
But it also carries the risk of provoking a major escalation from Russia.
No doubt.
And then perhaps the most concerning news of all.
What's that?
A leaked memo from the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense.
Discussing.
The possibility of developing their own nuclear weapon.
This sent shockwaves through the international community.
The implications are almost too frightening to contemplate.
It raises so many urgent questions.
Would it deter Russia? Or would it simply lead to a more dangerous arms race?
These are questions that world leaders are grappling with right now. And for you listening, it's crucial to think about how the international community might respond to the potential development of a Ukrainian nuclear weapon.
This isn't just an abstract geopolitical debate.
Right.
This has the potential to affect the lives of millions, if not billions.
The stakes are incredibly high.
They are indeed. As we reflect on this period of conflict, August to November, it's painfully clear.
What is?
This war is far from over.
We've seen those dramatic shifts on the battlefield.
Surge in drone warfare
The involvement of foreign powers.
and the specter of nuclear
A
escalation.
volatile and incredibly dangerous situation.
For sure.
This is just one chapter in a much larger story.
To understand this conflict, we need to delve into its historical roots.
That complex web of geopolitical factors that have brought us to this point.
We'll get into that in just a bit.
Stay tuned.
You're absolutely right. We've been focusing on the past few months, but this conflict, it didn't just come out of nowhere.
It's like a mystery, you know? You need to understand the backstory,
The motives.
the long-standing grudges.
And in this case, the backstory's complex.
Oh, yeah. You've got the shared history,
Cultural ties.
but also periods of conflict and domination.
And then there's a more recent history.
The annexation of Crimea in 2014.
The ongoing war in Donbass
All these factors contributed to the powder keg that exploded.
earlier this year.
And it's important to remember, right? These historical grievances,
They're not just abstract concepts.
no, they have real-world consequences.
Millions of Ukrainians have been displaced.
Countless lives lost.
The country's infrastructure devastated.
The human cost is immeasurable.
It really is.
It's hard to even fathom the scale of suffering.
The daily struggle for survival that so many Ukrainians are facing.
And as the war drags on that path to peace,
It seems increasingly elusive.
every day the risk of further escalation grows.
The conflict spiraling out of control.
It's a very real possibility.
The international community is trying to find a way to de-escalate the situation.
But it's a delicate balancing act.
On one hand, there's the desire to support Ukraine.
Hold Russia accountable.
But on the other hand, there's that fear of provoking a wider conflict.
Stumbling into a confrontation that could have catastrophic consequences for the entire world.
It's a high-stakes game of chess, with millions of lives hanging in the balance.
Playing out on a global stage, every move scrutinized.
By governments, experts, and ordinary people alike.
It really is.
This conflict is a defining moment in history.
And the decisions made by world leaders in the coming months and years, they'll shape the course of events for generations.
A heavy burden to bear.
It can feel overwhelming, even from our perspective,
Just trying to follow the news.
and make sense of it all.
Absolutely.
But I think it's crucial that we stay informed, engaged,
even when the news is difficult.
even when it feels like we're drowning in information.
I completely agree.
We can't turn away from the realities of this conflict.
No matter how painful.
It's too important.
Too consequential.
But even amidst the darkness,
There are glimmers of hope.
stories of resilience
Of courage.
that remind us of the enduring power of the human spirit,
Like the resilience of the Ukrainian people.
their determination.
Their unwavering spirit.
In the face of such adversity,
It's truly inspiring.
it gives you faith in humanity.
Even in the darkest of times.
And that outpouring of support for Ukraine from around the world,
While not always perfect.
it's a testament to human compassion,
People from all walks of life, all corners of the globe.
offering aid, support, solidarity.
It's a reminder that even in a world often consumed by conflict,
There's still empathy.
a desire to help those in need.
It's a powerful message of hope.
A reminder that even in the face of unimaginable suffering,
The human spirit can endure.
and even thrive.
And as we conclude this part of our deep dive,
Oh, I want to leave you with a thought. As you continue to follow this conflict, pay attention not just to the headlines
but to those individual stories.
of courage, resilience, and hope.
Those stories, those glimpses into the human experience of conflict.
They can be incredibly powerful.
Even more so than the strategic analysis.
Or the political maneuvering.
They help us connect with the conflict on a deeper level.
Understand its impact on real people's lives.
Remind us that behind the statistics and the battle maps,
There are human beings struggling to survive,
to rebuild.
to find meaning in the midst of chaos.
And perhaps in those stories, we can find hope.
For a future where peace prevails. Powerful stuff. It's about more than territory or politics. It's about people's lives.
Exactly. So wrapping up our deep dive into this timeline, what stood out to you as the most significant development? What really made you think?
So many twists and turns. It's hard to choose.
I know, right? Feels like every week there's something that could change the whole war.
But if I had to pick one thing, I'd say the Ukrainian incursion into Russia. That Kursk offensive. That's been a real turning point.
At the start, everyone assumed the fighting would stay within Ukraine. This really flipped the script.
It did. Challenging the assumptions about where this war would be fought.
And it forced Russia to divert troops and resources to defend their own territory.
Yeah, which could have a ripple effect on other fronts.
Like a chess game, every move has consequences.
Absolutely. This move, put Russia on the defensive, militarily and in terms of public perception.
Suddenly, the Russian people are seeing fighting on their soil.
It's no longer some distant conflict,
Right. It's a reminder that war can come home.
even in the 21st century.
And the fact that Ukraine has held onto territory inside Russia for this long, that's pretty remarkable.
It speaks to their tenacity.
And their determination.
It does. And it's not just Kursk, remember. We saw those incursions into Belgorod Oblast, too.
Maybe not as sustained as Kursk.
But they still show Ukraine's willingness to take risks.
Keep Russia guessing.
Yeah, like psychological warfare.
Making it harder to plan their next move.
That unpredictability,
Yeah.
that's a powerful weapon.
So you'd say these incursions have been a game changer.
Tactically, strategically, for sure.
It's added a whole new dimension to the conflict. And it raises so many questions about the future. How far will Ukraine go? Will Russia escalate?
How will the international community react?
Questions we'll be grappling with for a while.
One thing's certain. This war is not over. We're at a pivotal moment. The choices made now will have huge consequences.
Sobering thought. We need to stay engaged, informed.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed, but understanding the key events.
That's crucial for making sense of the world around us.
Absolutely.
Well, this deep dive has given us all a lot to think about. What stood out to you as the most significant development? Let us know. We encourage you to keep exploring these events and consider the long-term consequences of this war, because the situation is constantly changing. Staying informed is key to understanding the challenges and possibilities that lie ahead. Until next time,